Thanks for joining me, Cole here. And I wanted to do a little talk and a meditation for you all. I just did this similar meditation with my Emerge group online. And I think it's really powerful. I think it's really beautiful. So it's an accepting and releasing meditation. First, I'll just give you a little bit of, we'll have a little Dharma talk, which is just like a little teaching around the whys, and then we'll go into this little practice. So just get cozy and curious. Get cozy and curious. So when we're talking about accepting and releasing, these are really big topics, and yeah, they're quite vast, but I'll try to put a little bit in a nutshell. And what we accept and what we release. Okay, here's a good metaphor that we'll use. Imagine that you have a shed, and maybe you had one growing up, or maybe you have one now, and it's full of things and stuff. And a lot of it isn't yours. A lot of it may be your parents. A lot of it might be your grandparents, stuff that they'd put in the shed. Maybe it's your grandparents' shed. And then your parents put stuff in it, then you put some things in it as well. And you've had some old roommates that have left, and they're always leaving things around, so you shoved it in the shed. You've went through many changes in your life, and you just put things in there, things you didn't know what to do with, you didn't know how to deal with them. You know, there's always that box of like things that you like don't know where they go. So we just like shove it in the shed. Or some things that maybe you're not ready to get rid of, but you don't know what to do with. We just shove it in the shed. And so now this proverbial shed, we're moving houses, and we need to go through this full packed to the brim shed. And we need to figure out what's ours, what we want, what we want to keep, and then what we're going to let go. So going through this, unpacking and figuring out what's useful, what may have been useful. We're obviously kept it around for a reason. So lots of these things were once useful to us, and seeing if they're still relevant. I think relevance is a really important term, because so many things that we keep around, roles, masks, habits that we might not even realize that we have because they're so habitual, is something that served us in the past, but we need to upgrade. It's like we need to upgrade our operating system. Things have changed, times have changed, and this older version no longer works in with the new environment. So some different things that we can look at is we look at our conditionings and our patterns and our masks and our roles. So those are just a few things. Our core beliefs, our limiting beliefs, stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. These come from so many places. They come from, a lot of things come from our genetics that we were just born with. A lot of it comes from our human wiring, the way that we've adapted over tens of thousands of years, that we have, this human wiring that we share with everybody else. Some certain proclivities to be like this or to be like this. We all share in the human emotions. That's just a wiring that we have all of these different emotions. Then we have ancestral patterns, things that, happened to our ancestral line that are passed down in behaviors. Some passed down in genetics as well, but also passed down in behaviors. We get patterns and roles and messages from our parents, definitely, which have to do with their own things and then passed down to us. You can think about whenever we were a child, like what we did to get love. How did we get praise? How did we get in trouble? Like all of these little things shape our little systems. And what used to work very likely isn't relevant anymore. But it just became the water flows in the path of least resistance. So we just kind of carry on and keep doing what we're doing, not even realizing that we have a choice to do something different. So it's important to refresh and to update and to look at these patternings. Often the things that we're hanging on to turn destructive and they turn into addictions. And addiction can really be any way that we run from ourselves and we run from the present moment. We don't like the way that we feel, so we do something different to change the way that we feel, to get out of the present moment. This can look like substance addiction. This can look like so many things. Working out addiction. It can look like checking out, disassociating, Netflix binge watching, ice cream benders, not eating at all benders. You still call that a bender? I'm not sure. So many different things, the way that we distract and we change the way that we feel. Often these go way back, way back. Even though that action might not have been there, the patterning comes from a message that we got from a really young age, and that we're playing out in different ways. And to let these things go, I love the quote of that, the truth will set you free, but first you have to admit it. So there's lots of work around getting to know our patterns. So it's looking through the shed and really taking a good look at everything and being like, where did this come from? Identifying where it came from. Is it useful anymore? And then seeing how that we can let it go, we let it be, or we bring it with us. Lots of things, kind of jumping around a little bit, but some other things that we have. One of the reasons why we want to accept and release is that these things weigh us down. All of this baggage weighs us down, and it keeps us from spaciousness and freedom. And when we're running on the hamster wheel of just doing the thing that we always do, this conditioning, that we don't have any choice. I don't really know how much free will we actually have. That's a whole other conversation. But the little that we may have, we don't have when we're living in habituation and conditioning and perpetually running from the present moment, that we're checking out. Then we're definitely on the wheel then. So mindfulness, bringing us back into awareness of what we're doing, what's going on, how we're feeling, of the present moment, having presence, allows us to respond to life rather than react. And we're trying to not only respond, but to respond with an unguarded heart. And what that means is we don't have all of these layers and masks and filters on top of us. All the things that we use to distract and to protect us, and all the things and roles that we wear that aren't ours. How can we drop those and show up open and willing to interact and be present with the world? Some places where we get stuck is in our addictions, to where we have such a pattern that we can't. It's not that we can't, but it's so challenging to break it. We can be addicted to the way that we think, to this negative self-talk, to this story. We get addicted also to the story of, I'm not good enough. I'm helpless. To being a victim. To not belonging is a really big one. As humans, we are built for connection. So our biggest fear, one of our greatest fears, is that we don't belong. And we play that story out in many different ways. Some other barriers to freedom that we work in between this acceptance and release exercise are, where are we hanging on to resentments? How do we let our emotions and our pain weigh us down? The inability to find some spaciousness around some really horrible things that have happened to us. People go through horrible, horrible traumas. And it's natural and appropriate to want to protect ourselves. But eventually, we can't selectively numb emotions. So when we try to shut off and numb or hide certain parts of ourselves, the vulnerable pieces, we're also hiding our joy and our happiness and our ability to connect. So eventually needing to allow ourselves the emotions, the space for the emotions to run through, to be felt. You know, all of our emotions send us messages. And whether we listen or not, or maybe we feel things but we don't know what it means, all of this is part of the process of getting to know ourselves and getting to know ourselves underneath all of the things that have been put on top of us. All of our roles as a mother or as a daughter or as a wife or as a coach or a yoga teacher or an American or a Republican, or there's so many little sub things that we feel like we belong to that we put on a mask about, that we wear a role. And they're not necessarily bad, but it's just realizing that we do adapt into all these different scenarios. So back to the analogy of figuring out what is it that we want to keep and what is it that we want to let go of. It takes some courage to go in the shed. There's lots of stuff in the shed. So first, curiosity and compassion. So compassionate curiosity while you look for the shed. Let's just do a little meditation here. Little reflection and a meditation. And first I'll kind of show you a hand gesture, a mudra, a symbolic seal, or hand gesture, we'll go there. Symbol, hand symbol. So you may have seen statues of the Buddha or different deities, gods, that would have one hand up and one hand down. Yeah. So what this symbolizes is, I'm going to tell you the symbolism of the Buddha. So we normally got a big belly here. So this is with the right hand, we're taking everything that's coming at us. We're accepting. We're like, yes, I can be present with that. Yes, I see that. Yes. Like I'm not denying, I'm not deceiving, I'm not disassociating, I'm not running. I'm just accepting what's happening. Yeah. Doesn't mean I agree with it. I'm just accepting it. I'm saying, see you. This is our inner critic. This is our shadow. This is our joy. This is anything that's going on. It's like, yes, I see you. So this big belly is denoting that I'm digesting it. So this digestion is kind of the integration process. This is the looking through the shed process of what of this is nutrients, what of it is waste. So I'm going to digest the nutrients, my big belly, and then I'm going to let go of the stuff that I don't need. And this is going to come out of the bottom hand. Yeah. So go ahead and take this gesture, this mudra. Close your eyes down. And anytime you want to just release the hands down, then feel free to do that as well. But we're going to accept over here on the right hand, and we're going to release over here on the left hand. And in the middle, this important process of digestion and integration. Go ahead and close your eyes down. A little reflection and meditation. So imagine that you're carrying a big backpack, like a giant hiker's backpack, like you're going on the Appalachian Trail, one of the real big ones, and it's so freaking heavy. And what it's full of are different roles that you've worn in your life. It's full of all of the traumas and experiences that have happened to you. It's full of the resentments and the anger, the self-criticism. It's also full of all of the wonderful experiences that you've had in your life. It's just a full backpack of all the things. But we've got to lighten the load, and the things that are heaviest, when we think about the emotions of grief and trauma and sorrow and anger. All of these are necessary and appropriate responses. First, we are meant to move through, to get messages from them in order to digest and assimilate. And speaking of trauma, one definition of trauma is the inability to digest an experience. So coming back to that analogy of digestion. So when we're just holding it in the backpack and unable to digest. So I want you to visualize that you can take a few things out of your backpack. So what are a few things in your life that you would like to not have to carry around anymore? And the thing is that we can't go right down to this, to the left hand and release it, because first we have to accept it. And coming back to that quote, the truth will set you free, but first you have to admit it. And just having to come into yes, that happened. We don't get to bypass the acceptance that it happened. Often these things we deny and we push down and we don't want to talk about, we don't want to look at. Just want to get rid of. But that's not the way the digestion process works. First, coming into this acceptance. So imagine that it's coming into this acceptance. So you're feeling it come in. We're accepting. Inhale it in. And exhale it out. You can imagine it going through the belly and coming out the left hand, what is no longer needed. So inhale, accepting. You can even imagine this swirling process in the belly of taking the lessons and the wisdom and then releasing what is not needed around here. So this is a very simplified process, but it's a beautiful remembrance and a reminder that we do need to look at what's happening. We need to accept what's coming at us, to kind of pick through the shed. And then we release it. And we don't release it to forget it. And we don't release it to ignore it or to bypass it, but to free ourselves from the weight of it. And often we don't let it go. That's too simple. That's too cliche. Maybe we let it be, but we don't let it be on top of us. We can also think about meeting life as it comes. So accepting our emotions, accepting our moods, the bad days when the weather is bad, our emotional internal weather, being able to accept what's happening, to look at it and say, yes, this is happening right now. I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling insecurity. Then investigating and digesting and being like, what is going on here? What is this about? What is this trying to tell me? Keeping the vitamins, keeping the nourishment, and releasing the rest. So for a few rounds of breath here, I just want you to catch and accept and meet on an inhale, release on an exhale. And you can visualize anything that's coming to you. Often I like to visualize it catching in the right hand, swirling around the belly, and then dripping out like honey off my left fingers. So whatever suits you, just work with your breath. This integration and digestion process. I'll offer one more suggestion. I hope that you all come back to this later as well. All of it, all the different ways to work with this meditation. But often I'll be working with a certain thing, like a certain resentment or a certain challenge that's came up, and I will just kind of journal prompt or sentence prompt to myself, and I'll say, I accept that I cannot change this person, and I release that I have any power to do so. And I'll just keep coming up with sentences around the situation. I accept that I'm angry. I feel like my boundaries have been crossed. But I also release the tightness that feels like it binds me. I accept that I feel like I want to dissociate right now, that I can feel this coming up. My insecurities wanting me to withdraw. But I release the need to hide anymore. And instead I'm going to use my voice. So this is just an example, but to come up with finishing those sentences of I accept, I release, I accept, I release. And so often just doing this in the flow of whatever's coming up. We'll say a few things that'll come out and we're like, yes, that is it. Kind of that internal wisdom allowing its space to come up. A few more rounds of breath here. If you'd like to take the hands in the lap if you haven't already, or keep them where they are if that's resonating. And a reminder that accepting and releasing is not condoning. It's not saying that something is okay. It's just loosening some of the shackles that are around it, that tie us down, that weigh us down, lessening the backpack, unloading the shed, and allowing for more spaciousness, more lightness. Some things are more easily workable, some things are not and shouldn't be. But the more that we can come and sit and feel in and check in and listen in, the more we come into relationship with ourselves, we learn what we need, we hear. I invite you to come back to this practice, this acceptance and release. Acceptance and release. There's always more to cultivate. Always more space to be made. Always a little more wisdom to be had. And please, please explore with compassion and curiosity. Bring your hands together, thumbs at the third eye, and bow your head down. Thank yourself for showing up for you. This is the hard work and the worthy work. Namaste. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope that this resonated. It was a lot. I'm running, a course, an 8-week course over so much of this as we try to drill it down, to chisel it down to something short. I hope that it came across a little bit. And if you're interested in exploring more, then do check out my program Emerge. You can go into the description. You can go to my website as well. I'll be running another program in a few months. And just exploring ourselves, our wounds, how to turn them into wisdom, and what we want to take with us and what we want to release. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.